Hello there, welcome to a triple bill video where I'm talking about 3 weird retro sci-fi movies that are kind of never quite fitted in, especially at least in America, never fitted in to what America sees as sci-fi. I mean, 2 are European from Luc Besson and 1 was an American production. So it's basically Fifth Element, Valerian and a City of 1,000 Planets, and Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow. So these are 3 kind of retro-ish weird films that like a lot of old pulp, who are stylized in an old-fashioned look at science fiction. Okay, I should probably start by talking about Luc Besson because he's been controversial recently. We'll just get this over quickly. I've kind of hit the point now with all this cancel culture stuff that I don't care anymore. It's like I think you just have to separate the artists and who they are now, basically. There are some people at Woody Allen who I don't like, and I've never liked their art either, so I'm not going to... So I went off his films so long ago, and it really doesn't matter. Everyone else, I have the view of, okay, you can choose to watch them or not, I don't care. I view the films as the best part of them, and maybe some of the private actions are the worst part of them. There's been too many directors whose films I like who've turned out to... been accused of horrible things. Like, just recently Mr. Stanley's accused of stuff and I like his films. Luc Besson's been accused of horrible things. There's a lot of people who may have done horrible things in their private life who made some great art or some interesting art. And I think it's a case of basically people who are artists are weird as hell, and a lot of them are really dysfunctional, and some of them are going to do some horrible things, and you have to get over it. You know, really. You just have to get over it. It's just like, that's the way it goes. They're going to have to pay for them for private actions, you know, with their reputation. That's my view. Anything else has got to do with the law. And either if they make a film, you can go see it or you don't. A lot of people make films. They only get so much money from it. I think a lot of this chest thumping stuff is just pride, and a lot of people been so self-involved and so full of themselves, nothing to do with anything. So you just look at the art. If there's something weird about the art, then you can comment on it. So Luc Besson, for example, has a thing for female protagonists who are kind of young, who are kind of skinny, who in the 80s there were empowered female figures, in the 90s as well, and now it's like, was he a pervert? Well, who knows? And Joss Whedon's the same thing now. It's like, he doing these empower things, and now suddenly it's like, this guy's a bit weird. Yeah, just ignore it. Or you can comment on it, but it shouldn't be the only thing. I think we're in a kind of mania thing about that, but puritanical stuff at the moment that we just have to kind of get over. People are flawed, especially artists. Don't ever believe any artist is unflawed, because you're going to be disappointed pretty quick. Just accept they're going to be... You just hope they're not going to be rapists. It's probably the best thing you can do. Just assume there's probably a couple of bad things in the past that you have to kind of ignore. Or not ignore, but put in context of the good stuff, which is the work. You just have to do that, really. I'm just sick of the cancel thing and the puritanical thing, because it means you're wiping out so much good art that you shouldn't be. You should be placed in context of the person who made this wasn't maybe the best person, maybe not the nicest person, but maybe their art was probably the best part of them. Just try and have a mature attitude to it. I'm sure people love that comment. So anyway, back to the films. Yeah, these are retro stuff. These are all retro weirdo stuff. The joy of these films, which I saw all 3 of these in the cinema, is the idea of a pulp world that doesn't make sense scientifically. It doesn't quite come together. And it's the joy of it. I mean, there's a lot of sci-fi stuff that doesn't make sense scientifically. Star Wars doesn't make sense scientifically. But a lot of it has a sense of like old vehicles and stuff, and it goes for this kind of used future that colours over that. But I think when you go to the bright sci-fi stuff, like Speed Racer, maybe the Star Wars prequels, it pisses people off. It's like, oh, it's too much. It's like, we don't believe a future that optimistic or that bright and fun. It's like, it's too much for us. Don't do that. So, people don't like bright colours, partly in sci-fi. I love bright colours, but look at Flash Gordon. I mean, these are not Flash Gordon, these films. These are not the level of Flash Gordon, but these are still fun films. I mean, Fifth Element I've seen countless times, and it's a very weird film. I mean, the plot really doesn't hang together at all. It's just a bunch of sequences that Luc Besson wanted to do. He's a weird character. Bruce Willis plays the Corbin Dallas, which is a very weird name, who's a spy who's now a taxi driver because he quit his job. He runs into a woman crashes on his taxi, which loses him his license, which is a very weird plot twist. And this, played by Mila Jovanovic, she's the Fifth Element. She's this mythical being that will actually bring all the elements together that will ensure for the next, 10,000 years that evil cannot win in the universe. Yeah, that's very French, isn't it? And from that premise, you've got crazy monks played by Ian Holm. You've got crazy DJs played by Chris Tucker. You've got opera a spy who's an opera singer. You've got a massive shootout with Bruce Willis wearing weird French gear while shooting out in this big palatial palace against these monsters in weird rubber suits. You've got Gary Oldman going so far over the top that even, I don't think everyone could ever top this one for going way over the top. I think he just gave up at that point. Like, okay, this is as far as I can go. This is as weird as I can go, and he became much more normal after that. But what way to go out, because this guy's a lunatic in this film. This character Zorg is such a lunatic. It's hilarious. And he's such a weird look, and he's almost mocking the entire film, but it's just so much fun watching him. And everything's weird in the film. Nothing's practical. The joke is how weird everything is, how strange it all is, how bizarre the world is, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy, the whole thing. And Bruce Willis is playing along, because this was when he was still curious about things. This was still when he was at his peak, when he was actually making big budget films, but also making little films that some of which were actually really good. And this time he made a big budget film, was also one of those weird films at the same time. And this is just great. He's a straight man, but he also plays along with all these weird characters. So he plays it so straight, but kind of tweaked straight. Like, he knows what film he's in, and he's playing along. And he is really weird, subtly weird though. But he also allows every other character to go even weirder than him. And it just works. It's a really bizarre combination of actors and this weird world, but it actually works so well. And it's just so odd that it's just wonderful to see this kind of strange world being built up. And it's just a joy, because it's just pulp. It's just ridiculous. And the joy of it is how ridiculous the plot is compared to all this money spent on it. But it's a sense of ridiculousness to the whole film that is just a joy. You just watch it unfolding. In any other world, this plot, which doesn't make any sense anyway, would feel out of place. But in this world, it feels exactly right, because you've got these weird military guys in bizarre designer suits. You've got all these really clunky monsters that can't walk right, but that's part of the joke. It's just that a French director having a lot of fun with sci-fi conventions and setting them up, but also doing this weird thing about love, which is very strange, very French. And, after Luc Besson's controversy, it's something to comment about. It's weird. Again, that's a weird mix between the innocence of the art and the kind of perhaps creepy behaviour of the maker of the art. Because both these things can work within one person, but no one seems to be able to accept that you can have an idealistic side, but also have some horrible stuff to your private life, allegedly. So it's really weird, it's really strange, but it's just something you have to live with. But the film itself is just wonderful. It's just absurd. All the really weird, absurd things pay off because the world is so strange and so ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. It's how wonderful it is to be in such a ridiculous world. And that's what the film really brings to you. And that's what's so enjoyable about it. But it's one of those films you shouldn't know that much about before you go into the film. You should know as little as possible. You just know it's a weird film and it's very French. And that's what it brings to it. So now we're going to Valerian. I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing these three together is I think it's hard to actually talk about them as individual films. It's like their depth is in the way they're told and the visuals within the film. It's not about characterization at all. It's about how the actors portray the world, or how they don't portray the world, and how it all, the weird mix. Because it is all the world building. It's not about characters, even when it tries to be about characters. Which is, takes us to Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which is the weakest of the three films I'm going to talk about. It is the weakest one. Because it's miscast as lead actor. I mean, Dane DeHaan, who's an actor I like, but in this film, he does not feel comfortable playing the lead character who's meant to be this guy who's a playboy, but is also trying to improve himself and commit to the woman in his life, who's his partner, and working for the police, or the intergalactic police, who are trying to solve crime, and they're meant to have this kind of old-fashioned repartee, but the actors don't pull it off, especially Dane DeHaan, who just feels very sulky, and he looks way too young for the part. He just looks like a teenager. He's not, but he looks too young for the part. So that's the thing that doesn't work about the film. But everything else is a lot of fun, because again, it's so ridiculous. I mean, you've got like this world, beautiful world at the start that's blown up, that is basically a massive beach and all these weird creatures within, which we get back to later on. So it takes the world up, but does it in such a weird way that it'll alienate the typical American audience, I think. I think it does better overseas, but I think in America it was like, wow, this is weird, this is strange. Then the film goes into this weird talk with these two characters, which doesn't work. These two lead actors, Cara Delevingne, who's the lead actress in it. She's not bad actually. I mean, she got a lot of bad press for Suicide Squad, but here she's actually quite good. She knows what she's doing. I mean, it's not the best written part. There's only so much you can do within this part, but she does what she can. She's the better of the two actors in the leads. Then they have to go to the City of a Thousand Planets, which you see early on. You actually see how it's built up, and it's done by Space Oddity by David Bowie, and it's a build-up of these planets, all these. What starts off with a space station becomes this bigger station becomes this massive thing that ends up being taken from Earth and sent into the stars and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's got this massive infrastructure of all these different civilizations together on this one planet, or this one structure with thousands of planets, inhabitants within it. It could be very Star Trek-y, but actually it's so French and weird. It's like taking everything and making it odd. You have all these like banking systems and all these other aliens are bankers, aliens who are technology guys. Very much like the Star Wars prequels, but done in a very French way and very weird and very eccentric, and it's like, oh, this is strange. Clive Owen turns up as the bad guy. He knows what film he's in. He knows he doesn't have to give it his all, but just has to be the token villain. And he does his job perfectly well, but he's not really given much. But it's a professional actor doing his best. Much better as Ethan Hawke, is this really seedy club owner that Dane DeHaan runs into. He's a lot of fun because he's just seedy. He would have been much better in the lead part. He would have worked a lot better in the lead. He just didn't. That's who they should have cast. Rihanna shows up as this weird shape-changing creature, and she's quite good as well. So, like, all the supporting actors are having fun with their cliched characters. It's just, also I don't think the lead character was written properly anyway. I think he was woodenly written and not as much as he can really do with it. But there's lots of nice sequences going through the city. There's a chase through the city, going inside and outside in space and back inside and through all these blazes you shouldn't go into. You've got all these aliens you have to deal with. There's a really fun bit early on where Dane DeHaan's character has to go into this market that goes down to different dimensions. So you see these have a chase through different dimensions. So each dimension has a different setup within the world. So it's different physicality which you're jumping through, which is a lot of fun. The whole film's a lot of fun. There's lots of really cool sequences throughout it. There's a side of the military might, and there's lots of really cool action stuff. The plot's weird as hell and doesn't make that much sense. And it is a lot clunkier than Fifth Element. Fifth Element is genuinely weird throughout. This one has a more conventional plot, but it's a really unconventional world. So it can have done with more weirdness and a weirder leading man, really. But there's a lot to be like about it. You know, there's lots of interesting, fun things within this film. Again, what it does do is the world. The world is beautiful. The world throughout is beautiful. I mean, there's lots of people who are just like either tourists in the world and don't know that they're in the middle of something more important. You've got different military men who are really eccentric, who are like spies within these different weird cultures. You've got these monsters chasing them at some point. You've monsters and first-dimensional monsters and just tons of weirdness. And when you go through the city and they're running through the city, there's so many weird creatures that are not really there for the plot. They're just there to be fun. Or they're given a plot function, but they're really there to be there. To say, look at how weird I can be. Look how strange I can be. Like, you feel a lot of the plot points were brought up just to have a weird sequence. Which is fine, but I wish it's actually going weirder. It could have been done weird, just going fully into how strange it was and just really ratcheted up the strangeness. This time it feels like it's been tempered down a little bit. And which it didn't it really gets in its own way by doing that, because it needed that extra 20% weird. Because it sometimes it does resemble a bit more conventional action movie. But the world is so good and so interesting that you want to see more of it. It's just a really fascinating world. And just a strange one. It does take you back to the pulp imagination, the pulp covers you've seen in the past, and like old comics with strange pulp looks to them. You know, you can imagine a Rocketeer in this world quite easily, or a lot of kind of the more strange French characters, or stranger American pulpy characters in this world quite easily. Because the world is so good, but the plot itself is the weakest part of it. But it's still recommended just for the world. The world is great. I've happily watched this a few times, even though there's plenty of problems. But the world itself is so good. So see it as high definition as you can, like in 4K if you can. Or 3D. It's available in 3D, it's available in 4K. I've watched it both ways. Now we go to Sky Captain, The World of Tomorrow. This is a film, maybe 2007, 2008. Stars Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Angelina Jolie shows up for like 20 minutes. And it was all done like back projection and CGI backgrounds. It was all done screen. It's very different from the Luc Besson films, which had CGI in them, but had lots of practical creatures all over the place, and a lot of weird practical creatures. They really like the weird practical creatures in these films. And even a lot of the CGI was made to look kind of clunky the way a practical creature might look. This one, it's all stylized. It's robots, giant robots, men in planes fighting them, going through a city that's very gothic and very 1930s. It's the rise of a fascist nation, and it just exudes 30s pulp, you know, in a way that's a little more extreme than you'd get in Batman, the Tim Burton Batmans, or The Shadow or something. This is taking it to the nth degree, and they're very much influenced by the 30s Fleischer Superman short films, including the villains looking very much like mechanical men that were robbing banks in those films. And this film is a total joy visually. It really is. And even the plot is fun. The plot's a lot of fun. I mean, the problem is the art archetypes, and they overdo the Gwyneth Paltrow's character. She's this joke about her camera. She's only got so many shots left, and it's a really annoying subplot, and it makes her look really bad. The character look really bad when the character looks fine in the other way. It's just like one of those things like, you should have cut that out. That's terrible. They'll try to do a kind of 30s thing there, and it's the wrong joke. But everything else works. There's a great sequence with when the robots first come into the city, and you're seeing these giant robots, and you're seeing shadows, and you're seeing robots walking, and the clunk clunk on the ground, and it's just beautiful. You've got the Zeppelin flying over New York, which is beautiful. You've got attack on the Sky Captain's base, which is great. There's so much stuff going on in this film always. It's so gothic and so like 30s retro. There's a mix. There's like a gothic feel to it because it was a try to be modernistic in that time, but also that kind of like uber-power gothic feel to the background to a lot of this stuff that they were really played up with in this film. And it's just gorgeous. The whole film's gorgeous. They even Laurence Olivier playing the villain from outtakes from him as a younger actor. They got his permission from his family because the character he's playing, Laurence Olivier's playing is dead. So the actor's playing him as dead, and they've used bits from his old films to suggest them, which is a really nice thing. It also plays up the idea of, we're watching a film, this is a piece of cinema that's looking into the past, and it's all fakery, it's all about imagination, it's not about reality at all. And that's where the film really works, it's all about imagination. When they go towards anything that's character-based, it's been a bit shakier ground, like dialogue scenes. The director of this probably wasn't that experienced with dialogue scenes or actors, and he's much more comfortable in scenes that are having characters shoot weird ray guns or have giant robots flying through the sky, or having a flying float machine that is very similar to what we see in Avengers pretty soon afterwards. But of course, this is an old sci-fi concept. It's not like anyone's been ripped off. It's just it was repeated in a very successful film a few years later. And this film bombed. So there's a lot of influences with a lot of pulpy areas. Yeah, but what the film lacks, I think, compared to the Besson films, is, the human touch a little bit. The more handmade feel to it that those films have. And this one doesn't really have because it's so much in the green screen. But it has a lot of imagination, a lot of heart though. It really is into what it's into. It's really like, it's meant to be a 30s pulp thing. You can imagine Superman flying through this world, or 30s Batman in this world quite easily. You could take this whole design and do a whole alternative Batman, Superman, Justice League thing there quite happily. It'd be really cool and really interesting. And that's one of the other problems it has, is it's taken iconography from the less well-known areas like the Rocketeer or something, rather than something like Superman and Batman, which would have got people's interest a lot more. It's taking stuff from the King of the Rocket Men, that kind of serialised thing, rather than the more iconic characters, because it doesn't have them, so it becomes a bit the Sky Captain, which doesn't really have the same iconic punch to it that would get people interested. So I think a lot of people saw it like, oh, that looks interesting, I'll catch it in video or something. I don't think it had the character punch that to push through that got people interested. I think everyone thought the visuals looked great, but no one was really interested in the character. Which is a shame, because I quite like that old-fashioned character. But he's a supporting character. He should be a supporting character in a bigger film with a bigger superhero. He's not a character who can actually bring this film together. But it takes a lot of stuff that the Mummy films were also doing, like Globetrotting, which were influenced by Indiana Jones and stuff like that, in different worlds and different fights. But this one does it better because it's more naive and it's less cynical than Mummy films from this era. It's more enjoyable for that, because it does know what it is. It does know it's a bit of pulp. The actors know what kind of film they're in. They are doing their best. Some of the writing can be better, but they're doing their best. But the world itself is beautiful. The world you want to see in more films, but you want to see it in more better written films, really. But it's still a joy. It's still a total joy. It's just that when you look at this compared to some of the Incredibles, which had that kind of own retro world, it did the character stuff better. This one doesn't. But it still deserved better than it got, because it would have been cool to see a sequel to this one where I think they could have actually improved on what was wrong and made something stronger. I think this was a good origin thing, but it was not meant to be. It was a failure. I mean, all these films all bombed in America. I mean, the one that did best was Fifth Element, which did okay because of Bruce Willis. But all the others bombed America. They made their money overseas. And I think that's the fate of films like these. They're not something America can really has that much interest in. They're not conventionally looking at plots the way American narrative films what they want. They're more interested in weirder plots that does better worldwide rather than America. That's just the way it is. But I'd recommend seeing all three of them. They've all got interesting things. I mean, if you don't like Luc Besson, well, don't see the film, but there is something there. And Sky Captain is loads and loads of fun. And if you're into this stuff, also watch Rocketeer, which is also great, which I'll be covering soon. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with some more, but that's me for the week, I think. Until it's not. Who knows? But that's me anyway for now. Right, bye for now. Bye.